and welcome to this first lecture on this module of internal team collaboration for creating landing pages and optimizing user experience in this course on excellence in digital marketing. So, in this module, what we're going to do is to try and give you some in depth understanding of how to collaborate with internal teams within your company to create landing pages and optimize user experience so that you become excellent in digital marketing. And in this lecture, particularly, we will focus on creating landing pages. So, any thoughts on how to create landing pages? So I have for you a nice chart that you can see here. It starts with, it's a flow chart that says how would you go about creating landing page or pages. It starts with having the approval to create a new landing page, right? So once you have been given go ahead to create a new landing page, what you do is you pull your team together, and a team will consist of your own people or any other partners, including third party that you have, and start building your workflow. Now, how do you do the workflowing? We will talk about it in the remaining part of this lecture in a lot more detail. So there what you have is you start asking the questions. Do you have the basic design done? Have you done the design already? If the answer is no, then you need to talk to the design team to make sure that it is being completed. So you need to start making the design team work on that. Having done that, you need to then, if you get a sense that your design is being done, then what you need to is to parallelly move on the content, whether the content has been started being written. And if the answer is there, and there you see whether the content is finished or still in the process. If the content is still in the process, you talk to the content team to ensure that it will be done soon, and then you begin. Once you have both the things on design and content finished and ready, then you start building the page, and you make sure that your content is supported by the design and vice versa. And if that is not there, you evaluate and see whether your page looks good. If there's a room for improvement, you go back and look at the content and design are supported by each other, they are synced with each other. And if the says you finalize all the design, content, and coding, and then send it to QA for implementation. So the question, as I was mentioning in the last lecture, is how do you build your workflow more in general? So this gives you some idea of some key ideas, some key steps like designing the content, the synchronization, but there may be a lot more work and there may be other projects that you have from time to time. So how do you build your workflow is a general question. Any thoughts on that? So I have for you a very generic process of doing project management, and this basically consists of three main steps, which can be used to define any workflow or for a project. And it starts with defining the project requirement, then goes on to plan the project activities and make sure that implementation of those activities happen within the cost, time, and quality requirements laid out in the first step. So, how do you define project requirements? Any thoughts? So, the project you define the project need to define the project very clearly, and the way it's the earliest part of the project where the purpose and requirements are clarified. So, that is the starting point of the project. And what you need to do is to see how will this project create value. So, you need to say what the project is very clearly, and we will see how to do that. Then develop objective. What will this project achieve by the time it is completed? From there, you go on to defining the various work, which is through a what methodology called work breakdown structure, and also identify resource requirements which are critical for the remaining two steps as well as implementation and success of your project. So let's look at how do you state the project. So stating the project, basically you need to define the purpose and scope of the project, and that's best done by asking some questions in a group, in a team that is going to implement the project, including the key stakeholders and also the team project sponsor. So a lot of these questions are to be defined by the project sponsor. So what needs to be done? As simple as that. Why are we doing this? What do we want to achieve at the end of this project by doing this? When do we want to be finished? The timing. What will it cost you? What is the cost budget that we have? And outcomes from this, a short statement saying what do you want to do and by when and by with what results, and what time and what cost. See, very important is to define the end result, because you can complete the landing page in a variety of ways with different results being obtained. So we need to define the end result very quality. So through this action, you need to define the quality of action in terms of what results will it achieve within the time that you have and the cost parameters that you want to set for yourself. The next thing that you need to do in defining the projects, you define project objectives, and that defines the benefits and measures of success of a project. And again, here you need to ask certain question again, and and again, best done in the form of a brainstorming of the project team that is going to implement it. And the first question is to ask at the end of the project, what will we have? What value will we have? What is the thing that we want that we will get? What benefits do we want by the end of the project? Are there any constraints that we face, and we need to be cognizant of that? What requirements must be met by the end of the project? How will we know when we satisfy each objective? So you need to define objectives and then define very clearly in what way will you know that objective is being achieved. Once you ask these questions, you should be in a position to write a short statement of what are the specific objectives, what are the other objectives, and it will be good to compare your objectives to original concerns, original thing that you wanted that has given rise to this project or workflow. The third thing coming out in a step in defining the projects to develop the work breakdown structure, in which you establish specific outputs and accomplishments to be completed. And again, what you do with the team is to ask questions. You take each of these objectives that you have and say, for each of these objectives, what do we want to accomplish in this project? What are the major outputs to achieve that objective? What are the component part of these major outputs? And as a result of that, you list major deliverables, separate each deliverable into sub-deliverables, and develop a chart or an outline of the work that you need to do. So this work breakdown structure is a graphic or outline showing how major deliverables relate to sub-deliverables. Lowest level accomplishment or deliverable is called the terminal element. All work is done and all resources are used obviously in the terminal element. Terminal elements combined to produce all higher level deliverables, and each terminal element should have a specific quality or performance standard. That will only ensure doing that is required essentially to make sure that you meet the quality requirements. The last step in defining the projects to identify the resource requirement, basically to avoid future resource problems and help assign responsibility. So for here you need to go to each terminal element of the work breakdown structure and ask these questions again in a project team meeting. What knowledge and skills are needed? What facilities will we need? What equipment is required? What materials and supplies are required to make sure that this terminal element is executed well? What special or unusual resources do we need? And you need to identify the type, amount, and cost, and that develops your resources required for the project to be completed successfully. Having defined the project requirements, what do we do next? So the next we will look at how do we plan the project activities. So how can we clearly project activities? How can we plan the projects very, very clearly? So thank you so much for watching this first lecture in this module on internal team collaboration for creating landing pages and optimizing user experience. I hope you're beginning to learn something new again, beginning to enjoy, and I look forward to see you again in this lecture.